Hey everyone, welcome to Nolzur's Marvelous Tutorials, Episode 2 with RealmSmith. Today we are going to paint the young blue dragon. Last week actually we did the young copper dragon, and it turned out that we were done early because it was a much easier miniature to paint because of the color scheme. So we're going to crack this open. This is the Nolzur's Marvelous Miniatures Young Blue Dragon by WizKids. It is a D&D product, and we're going to use Vallejo paints to paint it today. Real quick while I'm opening it up, I want to thank, of course, WizKids for the awesome partnership and our ongoing partnership. This is a show that we will be doing every single Sunday from 7 to 9. Next weekend, because of D&D Live, we'll actually be there. But next weekend for D&D Live, we will not be doing one because all of the streams are canceled for that weekend because of the wonderful event that D&D is putting on for everybody. This is really loud, and it's... and I'll have all these ties. It's nicely secured. Let's just take this blue dragon out. But yeah, every Sunday we will be doing this from 5 to 7 Eastern Standard Time, and that is 2 to 4 Pacific Time. We are doing the Nolzur's Young Dragons to start, and so this is the first in the series. Sorry, the second in the series. Last week we did the young copper dragon. You can see that on VOD at RealmSmith.tv, twitch.tv/RealmSmith, and you can watch the VOD version of that so that you can kind of learn how to paint that awesome copper dragon. This one here, like I said, is the young blue dragon. Next week we're going to be doing the young black dragon, and the week after that we'll be doing the green dragon. Let's get right to it. So to start, we're going to get heavy blue, and that is a heavy extra opaque paint from WizKids, from Vallejo. And if we can get the other screen there, just the split screen. And for, actually, let's go through tools first before we do that. So you have your young blue dragon. That is, again, by WizKids. We have some Vallejo brushes, including a detail brush, a base brush, and a dry brush. Then, of course, a water pot, some paper towel, and a paint palette. On to paints. We have quite a few paints. There's 12 Vallejo paints we're using today. Bone white, heavy blue, black, electric blue, sepia wash, and magic blue. Heavy ochre, which again is a heavy opaque paint. Khaki, livery green, then a blue wash, violet ink, and tan. So let's jump right into that. The blue wash, like I said, extra opaque heavy blue is kind of Vallejo's version of any heavy paint in a paint line. So basically it's designed to go in and on in kind of one coat if possible. And so that is, it's great for base coating, as you would imagine it would be. So we're going to use a large brush here, and we're just going to go in and we're going to start to lay down this heavy blue on all the areas that the scales will be blue. And that is all along the back of the tail here, and it's also going to be on the underside of the tail as well. If you guys have any questions, we are live in the chat. I will be keeping an eye on things. Joel, who typically co-hosts for me, is not here tonight to take your questions and relay them, so I will get to them as soon as I possibly can. I'm just using a larger brush here to lay this in, and I want to make sure that when you're putting on a base coat like this, that you want to kind of jab it into all the nooks and crannies so that you make sure that you get a nice solid coat with this. I always add just a touch of water to my paints, even the heavy ones, because we just want them to flow really, really nice. Just like this. Taking a look in the chat here. Again, if you guys are in the chat, be sure to say hi, and we'll answer your questions as we go. I am going to keep away from the recesses on the wing here. And again, we're using heavy blue to base coat all the areas of the scales. We're actually going to then later on use heavy ochre within the middle of the scales. We're going to add this really cool kind of veiny texture, or pattern I should say, to it. Here we go. Very excited about D&D Live. I'm glad to have the opportunity to go next week in LA. Some very exciting things happening, and very excited to hear all the announcements that are coming. Of course. These young blue dragons from WizKids are really awesome. They just came out. They're considered Wave 8 of the Nolzur's unpainted line. And they are in stores now. I think last week they were released, I'm sure. Something like that. Again, we started with the young copper dragon last week because it was kind of the easiest, just because the metallic dragons all tend to be kind of one tone. And then the chromatic dragons, like this one, tend to have a bit more depth in color. And with the metallic paints, it makes it really easy to get decent coverage and kind of a look that you're searching for. All right. The great thing about this show is that I can then pit whatever dragons I paint against my players on my live stream, because our live streams are Monday night, 7:30 Eastern. And they always get a bit of I guess, a sneak peek into what might be coming down the line. So spoilers to any of my players that are watching. I'm not getting the chat here for some reason. I'm not sure why. Are you seeing chat there? Now, we are only going to do the heavy ochre on the inside of the wing. On the outside, we're going to do it all blue. Okay. Like I said, any questions that you might have or anything like that, feel free to ask. Any techniques, any ideas that you guys have in the ways that you have been able to... Oh, I'm seeing comments start now. If you guys have any other techniques that you've used for these minis, we'd love to hear them. Mikey says, hope WizKids comes out with a gold dragon. Really needed in my game. Don't we all, Mikey? Honestly, don't we all need a little bit of gold dragon in our lives? And I know there's a lot to release when it comes to the D&D line of monsters in general. I'm super excited to see all of the awesome releases that they have in the next little while. We did vote last week to see what dragon you guys wanted to paint next. And blue was at the top of the list. Y'all like the blue dragons. I like it. We do have 2 hours to do this, so hopefully we can get her done in the time allotted. All right. And you can see this heavy blue just really covers nicely. It's a nice solid coat. It's literally one coat that I've put on here. And you can see that the coverage is fantastic. After this heavy blue, we're going to use a blue wash. And the blue wash is a little bit of a darker blue than this. Actually, you know what? Maybe I'll dry brush it first and then I'll blue wash it. We'll see. And that's the beauty of these kinds of shows is literally I don't paint a demo or a practice piece before I do this. I literally just jump in and do it on the fly. And I mean that just kind of demonstrates, you know, how when you're actually painting, sometimes you got to roll with the punches. You add a color you don't really like, it doesn't go on quite right, or doesn't have the right kind of contrast or complementing color, and so then you try and do your best to kind of adjust as you go. Want to say Happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. Like the hardest job on the face of the planet. Talked to my mom earlier. It was nice. So happy Mother's Day. Dark Strider 193 says, what's your experience between the paints you're using and GW paints? That is a great question. I do find I use GW for many years, and they make great paint. But the thing that I do enjoy about Vallejo is, and I'll speak to Vallejo rather than kind of comparing, and you guys can make your own comparisons based on your experience. But for me, I love the dropper bottles for Vallejo, so the paint goes a lot further. And the shelf life on Vallejo bottles is like 4 or 5 years. It's actually quite a long time. And so with the dropper bottles, literally, you put as much in your palette as you want, and you go through a lot less of it. So that is really beneficial for that. The other thing too I find is Vallejo paint tends to stay wet in the palette longer, which gives me a bit more time to work. And if I need to come back to a color later, it's actually quite easy for me to dip right in, and the paint is literally still wet like an hour later. I am putting paint all over my nice DM shelf. It's all good. Character, right? But still using heavy blue here. This is the longest kind of process, the base coating process, obviously. Merciful DM, got it. Says hello and greetings. They're saying my mini paints always dry out. Sometimes it helps to. Sometimes people say put a ball bearing in the bottle, no matter what brand you have, just because it helps to keep the paint kind of broken up, especially when you shake it. And just make sure you seal your paints, folks. Like, no matter what paint you use or what brand of paint you use, you know, if you leave your cap slightly loose and air gets in, it will absolutely dry those paints out. So just make sure that you guys are diligent with closing your paints, and use a palette. You know, paints that have pots, you definitely want to close those up every time you drop some paint in your palette, so that, again, you get the longevity out of your paints that you want. Okay, so we're close to done base coat here. With big models like this that have big spindly wings and areas, sometimes it helps to twist it around a bunch, because every time I twist it around from a different angle, I notice an area that I didn't paint. And of course, with this too, with this kind of adding a base coat like this, I do find that adding more is safer. So we will be painting over other areas, and for the most part with heavy extra opaque paints. So basically you'll be covering up anyways. And so if you go over into areas, so our whole belly here is going to be heavy ochre and khaki and a sepia wash, which will make it look nice and kind of yellowy and like it should. And I find that if you go over, it's okay, because again, we're trying to get coverage here at this point so that we don't get any little white areas. I'm running out of dragon to hold on to here, so just gingerly holding it. Big Puppy Stewart says, make sure your figure has time to wish Tiamat a happy Mother's Day. It's good. Aw, Tiamat, Queen of Dragons. Such a sweetheart. Not really, but I don't need to go into the mouth here. I'll be using tan for that later. Anybody out there played Horde of the Dragon Queen? There's lots of dragons in that. These would be great for that. I wish I had some of these minis when I ran that campaign. We were running it actually in our live streams, and then recently are converting to homebrew for our Order of Dragon's Bane live streams. All right, man, this is going all right. I think we're close to done. You guys can see here, nice solid blue coat, basically in one coat with that heavy blue from Vallejo. Very effective. Does exactly what it's supposed to do. Just like that. But I am finding little nooks and crannies that I missed. Still need to work on a bit better lighting in the studio. Hopefully you guys can see it well at home. But I do need it a bit brighter in here for my purposes. All right. There we go. We are going to let that blue dry for a little bit. It's going to need a little bit of time to dry. Mikey says he's starting Horde next month. Really excited. It is a great, great campaign. I really enjoyed running it. I've run it a couple times actually with a couple different groups, and I've loved it. It's been really fun. I enjoyed it quite a bit. Naroon says, when I use washes, it gets air bubbles in it. Am I doing something wrong? So the reason why sometimes you get air bubbles in your wash is honestly mostly because because you're painting in quite vigorously. So as you do that, it creates air pockets. And so what helps to not get bubbles is to just push it around slowly. What I do with a wash, and you'll see when we wash this a little later, what I would do with a wash is I will deposit it on the miniature and then move it around the miniature rather than kind of roughly. It's a different technique than applying a base coat, for example, or even a layer coat. You definitely want to be ginger when you're moving it around. I do find, though, I do get bubbles as well sometimes, especially when you're trying to kind of rush through a mini because you need to get it on the tabletop the next day or whatever. But I do find that even if you get bubbles, that they don't tend to show up in the final. And I rarely do a wash as the final step in painting. So, you know, some of those imperfections that you get are quickly kind of covered when you dry brush over that or add whatever layer paints. Don't forget the base this time. Dark Strider says, we'll see if we get to the base. This puppy's going to take a little bit longer than the Copper Dragon did. But glad to see some of you guys are back. All right, so I think I'm doing okay here. All right. Parts of the wings are dry, so I'm actually going to go into heavy ochre and start to lay down that base coat before I dry brush the blue here. Again, this is an extra opaque paint from Vallejo, heavy ochre. Put some of that in the palette. And this we're going to use to paint the insides of the wings, so in the spaces, as well as the belly and neck, and anywhere where that kind of lighter undertone would be. For that, we're going to use Vallejo #2 Torre brush. These are they're synthetic brushes, and they're actually quite good. You can get them in packs of, you can get them single, or you can get in packs of 3 that they sell for miniature painting purposes. All right, so I'm just going to start to do this. And basically what I'm doing is I'm putting the paint on, and a little tip for painting in general, I usually start kind of in the middle of the area that I want to paint, and then I'm pushing paint closer to the edge. So rather than starting right on the edge, I find that I get a lot more mistakes that way. And so I am going to start in the center and push it down. Now, no matter whether you're using the heavy paints or not, or the extra opaque paints or not, you can see that because the blue is a darker shade than the ochre that we're using, we're getting a little bit of it showing through. So I may need to do 2 coats on this for that purpose, but it's all good. How many of you guys have purchased these WizKids Young Dragons? And how many of you have already painted them? And which ones did you get? I'd love to hear kind of what's out there in the wild and what people are digging. And then beyond that too, what WizKids minis are your favorites? I know that obviously the Beholder was a crowd favorite. This is going to take a little while to get this ochre in here. I find too, like, the base coating part tends to get a little tedious in general when mini painting. Perhaps some of you, appreciate or like that step. Personally, for me, it's a little daunting sometimes, especially when you're looking at a big mini like this. It is a little paint by numbers, and so, I tend to, sometimes you get a little, it looks kind of primary, but it's in the washing stage and kind of the dry brushing and even layer paint stage that magic starts to happen, and it really starts to come together. Sorry, Gooey Green says, can you put the minis more in the center of the logo keeps covering up the painting? Yes, I can. I will absolutely try my best to do that. I tend to sometimes get into my own, groove here. And all right. Hopefully that's a bit better. Again, we're just painting heavy ochre into the inside of the wings. And then we will also put it on the belly as well. I may switch to a slightly larger brush for this because we only have so much time. Mikey says, of course, the Beholder, but also the Owlbear. After watching Jason paint those two, I bought them immediately. Thanks. With all the Vallejo paints for those two. Seriously, Mikey, that's awesome. I'm glad that we could inspire you that way. Arcane says he can never find the Beholders anyway. Still, eh? I know they were super popular, and WizKids just keeps pumping those bad boys out, and nobody can get enough of them. It's an amazing mini. Last year at Origins, I painted 11 Beholders. And I've had enough of painting Beholders, that's for sure. But I love that miniature. It's probably my favorite miniature I've ever painted. If you guys want to check out the tutorial that we did for painting the Beholder, you can check it out on our YouTube page at youtube.com/RealmSmith. We have a bunch of tutorials up there, including some terrain tutorials and such. But the two mini tutorials that we have up there for the Nolzur's line was the Owlbear and the Beholder, actually, which Mikey was referring to. And you'll get some cool technique ideas there. Our Beholder series is a 4-part series. It's actually 5, but the 5th part, which isn't released yet, will be available only to people in members of the Realm, which are our exclusive kind of Facebook group members for subscribers of our Adventure Crate. But we have the Beholder series. We go through 4. You guys have access to 4 parts. It goes all the way through base coating to kind of layer. Actually, prepping the mini is kind of the first step with base coating, and then we go through the whole process of layering, and then we do some like OSL special effect lighting, which was a lot of fun to do, just like the front of the Monsters manual. So we did that, and then part 5, which again is exclusive to members of the Realm. We will be teaching you how to put LEDs in the energy blast from the eye stalks using Green Stuff World products. So for here, I'm just going to kind of feather it along the stomach. It's kind of hard to see in here just because, again, that area is really tight and it's kind of dark, but we're just going to continue to feather it into the underside of this stomach here. Perfect. All right. And again, as I go around this mini, I'm seeing areas like that finger. Look at that. That one toe. Still just the primer color. Best thing about WizKids minis for me, one of the best things, there's a lot of things that I like about them, but one of the best things about the WizKids minis is they come pre-primed. Literally, you saw we popped it out of the package and went straight to paint. It's really cool. All right, so we've got the whole belly there. We've got a base coat on the neck. We're going to have to come in here with a second base coat, I think, because, again, the blue is showing through here. And I'm getting a little bit on some of the toes and stuff, but I'll go in and I'll address that after with some more blue. And again, I find that, I tend to be a bit of a perfectionist, and I have to actually kind of force myself to just get things done and not worry about, the small details as much. I mean, they are going to be on the table, and they're one creature in a table of many, right? So sometimes they still have mold lines. That is really true, Arcane Void. And obviously, if you're kind of a perfectionist like I am, especially on kind of the showpiece mini. So a mini like this for me is a showpiece mini. It's a mini that will show up in a big battle. I painted like 30 zombies, and I didn't even touch any prep work at all when I did that. I just wanted to I just wanted to get as many zombies on the table as I could. But something like this, absolutely. I mean, we didn't do that at the tail end, the top end of this show. This mini is actually pretty good for mold lines. The bigger ones tend to be. But when you have mold lines, you can just use a hobby knife to kind of scrape those bad boys off. All right, we're using heavy ochre here. Just so you guys know, as we bring the colors up on the screen here, as I go through them, you'll see that there's a little number designation that comes with it, and that will kind of inform you as to what color you need when you order it, either online or in the store, just to make sure that you have the right Vallejo color when you go to pick it up. And this guy's really spindly and twisty, I tell you. Super dynamic pose, but it does present some challenges when painting for sure. Just takes a bit more time and effort. All right, so you can see I've done all the way down the tail, onto the belly, and then I'll do this other wing here. And then I think that we'll dry brush the blue before we do a second coat of heavy ochre in these areas. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, the pose is a little awkward to paint in places, but you can see that this wing bends a little bit, so I can actually just kind of spread it out a little bit so that I can paint the underside fairly easily. Just like this. For those of you, obviously, that are watching live now and want to be able to, you know, whether you haven't picked up the minis yet or you don't have the paint that you need in order to paint it, or you'd like to grab some Vallejo paint to try that, these will be made available VOD. I've been told on the D&D YouTube channel and on our YouTube channel. So that would be youtube.com/D&D, I believe. And then for us, it's youtube.com/RealmSmith, and you'll be able to see all of our VOD kind of post live stream tutorial videos or versions of this then. So we are 35 minutes in, and I'm almost done the base coating for the most part. And again, folks, we're painting a blue dragon in 2 hours, so you know, you'll see that I'm not taking the great care that I typically would maybe on a kind of a centerpiece mini like this. You know, this we're showing you techniques to be able to get things done quick, get them on your tabletop in a decent amount of time. I mean, if I were perhaps taking my personal time to paint this and or I wanted to be really, like, it would be appearing more regularly in my campaign, I may take some more time and care and do some extra effects and stuff. But again, this is our attempt to kind of get it on the table in a way that is still super impressive, but takes into consideration kind of time commitments and all that stuff. It's busy to be a DM, really busy. Big Puppy Stewart says he likes some of the brands that make the softer plastic. It is easier to cut and reposition. Absolutely. He's talking about Bones as well as the WizKids stuff. But yeah, I mean, you know, my players, well, I guess everybody's players are different, but for the most part, players aren't going to pick a mini up and look at the details. It needs to look good at basically, you know, a foot to 2 feet away from you on the tabletop, or from your players on the tabletop. And so, you know, spending a lot of time trying to get the paint job perfect, given the fact that, you know, again, a DM's time is really busy and you have lots to do and prep for. For that reason, you know, perhaps you want to spend a little less time on the painting and more time kind of on prepping for your event and so on. All right. I am missing my magic blue. How do I have 12 paints and I'm missing my magic blue? I don't know why. Strange. All right. Let's go with a wash. So we're going to use this blue wash first, actually, before I do that. The blue wash is a dark wash. And washes, for those of you that are kind of new to painting, will notice that basically, well, we call it, I say this every time, but call it like talent in a bottle or liquid talent. Basically, it goes into the recesses and creates depth and contrast in certain areas. So we're going to do it on the wing here so you can see. I'm taking a brush here, kind of a larger brush, loaded it with the wash, and then I'm just going to spread it along the wing here. And you can see as I spread it, it's going to go into the recesses, and it's going to create shadow and depth in those recesses there. And we're just basically, again, roughly, for the most part, you can see that I'm getting bubbles there, but that's not a huge issue because those bubbles tend to go away a little bit. And the wash will look a little muddled once it's dried, but that's okay too. And the washes take a little bit longer to dry, so I tend to do this closer to the top of my painting session so that by the time I get back to them, that they are dry and I can continue to kind of move on. We're going to go through quite a bit of wash on this guy. We'll get the other wing down here. That's actually the Game Air. So so you guys know, I was brought a magic blue here, but it's actually the Game Air bottle. They're a little thinner and they go right into airbrush. You can be used though. Some people actually prefer to paint with the Game Air paints because they're able to blend a little bit better and they don't have to dilute them and all of that kind of stuff. But for our purposes, we're just looking for the regular Game Air stuff. That's a hint for. I don't, eh? They should be on my rack on the desk there. I am dripping everywhere here. The one thing we do want to be careful of is not getting this wash onto the heavy ochre areas. So when we start to wash the under area or the underbelly, or areas close to it, we might end up using a smaller brush to do that. But this will just go into all the textures and give you that contrast that you're looking for and that shadow that you're looking for. Perfect. Okay. See, and again, when you're painting these minis and they have a lot of kind of nooks and crannies and such, I'm noticing here already that in that between the leg and the body there, I missed a whole area of blue. So I'm just gonna load that brush up again and just dab in there and get her done. And you'll see that even areas that you kind of accidentally painted heavy ochre, that'll continue to happen as well. All right, get that wash in there. You can see it's all over the wings, and it'll just dry and give you some depth. We're going through quite a bit of wash here. Still on the blue wash. Hopefully we have enough time to get to the effect in the all these, well, not all these blue dragons, but sorry, not all the young dragons, but the blue dragon comes with a little kind of lightning effect that comes with him in his blister. So if we have time, we're going to use an ink to put some color onto that. All right, so that's pretty much it for the blue wash. Just add some depth in the deepest kind of recesses. I will put some on the backside, but again, want to be careful not to get it as much as possible onto the heavy ochre areas that we're painting here, because we're still going to dry brush all the blue, so that'll still give you some. My hands, it's a painter's plight, I guess. All right, so the first coat of heavy ochre has dried, so we're going to go back in with heavy ochre again and continue to lay down a coat there. All right, we'll get into the really exciting stuff real soon, folks. Neron says, do you use a coat to protect the Mini when it's finished? If so, what kind and why? Yeah, so there are lots of kind of spray varnishes on the market that work well. I would use a mini spray varnish. I wouldn't use like a household or a hardware spray varnish. Vallejo just released a series of spray cans, which are great. And, you know, basically any mini company out there has a decent spray varnish, but the Vallejo ones are quite affordable and very effective. So I would use a spray varnish for the Blue Dragon, for example, because it's huge. If I'm lazy, and I live in Canada, so sometimes it's a little cold out, which isn't ideal, first of all, for me and my dislike of cold weather, but also not great for the paint or for the varnish. If it's too cold out, it affects the consistency or the way that the paint actually dries. So you want to be careful not to do it in too cold weather. Anyways, so when that's the case, and if I have smaller models, just like character models or NPC models, I'll use a Vallejo varnish. So they're matte varnish. They're kind of the one that you actually just brush on. And I'll use that and just brush it all over the Mini. It's really fast, doesn't take long at all. And then your Mini's nice and protected. But you absolutely, especially because with D&D Minis, you're handling them a lot. I mean, sure, with tabletop wargaming Minis, it's essential too. But we are handling them a lot, and they're falling, and they're being dropped sometimes by clumsy characters or players at the table. I have a couple of those. But yeah, so you want to try your best to protect it as well as you can. And so, you know, 1 or 2 coats of that brush on matte varnish by Vallejo or a spray varnish of some sort is usually the best kind of way to go with that. All right, this is going on nice. See, as you can see now, we're getting a much more solid coat. It's not fully solid, but that's okay too. The wings are kind of they got a really cool texture to them, and they're not exactly, you know, they're kind of see-through and semi-opaque, and it's okay that they aren't, you know, perfectly covered here. I'm getting a little blue. That's the other thing about doing tutorials like this is we don't have a lot of drying time, or we can't allow for a lot of drying time. So sometimes in the deeper areas, we'll get caught with, you know, paint still, or the blue still kind of drying. And so it kind of affects our ability to paint the other colors on here. All right. Done. Okay, so that's decent enough for the heavy ochre in the wings. We're also going to do the same on the belly, and especially on the neck here. You can see it can definitely use some more ochre to kind of make it more of a solid texture, or solid coat, I should say. And then I will stipple some more of this kind of close to the belly where the transition between the blue and the ochre would occur. Again, we're still on heavy ochre here. All right. Okay. Now this wash is going to take a little while still. So Add some more to the tail here, just to make it a bit more of a solid coat, like that. All right, okay. All right. Wash your brushes, make sure you wash them off every time you use a new color. Ochre. Oh, Kellyanne OL says, I always thought it was pronounced ochre. Now, frankly, all of us who have watched oh my gosh, it's Bob Ross. Yeah, totally just blanked. We should know that, and I should know that. I think it is ochre. I've said okra like forever. Everybody at home probably is cringing every time I say okra. Maybe it is ochre. Anybody else vote on that? It's a regional thing. Both are correct, depending on where you're from. It's good. Do you use a coat to protect? Oh, we already answered that question there. All right. Okay. All right, so we're doing all right here. It's looking pretty good. You can see that that wash is still drying on the wings. It does take some time to do it, so we're just going to move on to something a little different. I'm actually going to base coat the mouth, the inside of the mouth. You want to be a little careful because we've already done the orange, the blue around, so we want to make sure that we try and not mess that blue base coat up. And again, as I was spinning it around, I saw that the back of the fin there on the ear is missing some blue. So I'm just going to go in and add a little bit more there. There we go. Okay. All right. Okay. We're going to grab some tan here. And again, this is just one of the usual Game Color layer paints. In mint condition says, I love this. I love his stream layout and how the paints shadow against the light. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that. We love hearing from you guys. We love hearing how you think our stream is and what you'd like to see more of, what you'd like to see less of. You know, what would be more helpful. I was also told last week it would be really great if we could talk about kind of like the blue dragon in general. I mean, this is a D&D stream, and you know, painting these and getting them on our table is just half of it. The other half is actually, you know, how do we use it in game, and what do we do? What I'll do is maybe as this wash is drying, before we can kind of dry brush it, maybe we will pull out the Monsters Manual and read a little bit about the young blue dragon. Kind of a little bit of story time with RealmSmith, maybe, perhaps. I hear the laughing in the other room. A little story time with RealmSmith. Oh, look at that, eh? Look at that unsightly blotch of tan I just added in his eye. Poor blue dragon. It's okay, we'll paint over that after. All right. We are going to put him down, or her, down, and we're going to pull out the Monsters Manual for a little RealmSmith story time. Wow. All right. Last time it was really weird. Before the stream, before I started, I actually opened the Monsters Manual directly to the Copper Dragon page. So let's see if we do it this time. Not even close, devils. Not even close. A green dragon. We're pretty close though. Look at that, eh? Blue dragon, blue. Here it is. Let's see, young blue dragon. We're looking at stats here. Multi-attack, dragon attacks with one of its bite and 2 claws. That's nasty. Lightning breath. So they exhale lightning in a 60-foot line that is 5 feet wide. Each creature in that line must take a DC 16 dexterity saving throw. They're wicked. So young blue dragons are challenge 9, which is about the level. Actually, that's not true. So we're running Storm King's Thunder in one of our live streams. Actually, tomorrow night at 7:30 Eastern, we are live streaming our Storm King's Thunder campaign on our Twitch and YouTube channels, www.youtube.com/RealmSmith. And a blue dragon is like one of the big baddies. Spoiler warnings. But it's not a young blue dragon. It's actually an ancient or an adult blue dragon, Imarith, actually. They're nasty, though. But young blue dragons, as you can see, don't have legendary actions and such. So they're not quite as beefy, but level 9 is pretty serious. My party's level 9, but Imrith is like a legendary creature, so that's going to be fun. Okay, I'm just painting over the little nasty tan mark. All right. It's getting there. It's still a little tacky, still a little wet. The ochre is also still drying. So this is where I kill a little time on the stream, because there really isn't anything else I can do at the moment. Although, you know what? I'm going to open up that page again because I missed the horn on her head, and I think there may be some other areas. We're going to do her claws black, I think. I think that's what we want to do. Dragons. There we are. Well, let's look at her. Okay, so all the spines in the back are kind of the blue, and then they've got doing the ochre color kind of for the under area of the tail. Of course, the scales along the belly, which we've already done. Some of the ones on the head are that lighter color. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and just pick out certain ones that we want to be kind of those bony protrusions or horns. I might even keep this open. I kept it open to the Copper Dragon last time and then ended up getting paint all over my Monsters Manual, which was fun, let me tell you. Bill Allen, how's it going, buddy? A little shout out to my buddy Bill Allen who's watching. What is up? All right. Yeah, so I will go through and I will base coat some of the horns and the kind of the bony protrusions on the top side of this dragon. This big horn on the head that he has on his head is kind of very characteristic of the blue dragon. We have 1 hour. Think we can finish this in an hour? Maybe. You know what? I think I'm going to go through and I'm going to paint all these little guys with the ochre. So they're going to be kind of a light bone color in the end. Just the center ones up to about there. That'll be cool. There we go. And as you can see, a little tip that I like to give every week is when you're trying to get into tight areas or do detail work, it helps to brace your painting hand. So I'm holding the mini in one hand. I'm kind of cradling it as gingerly as possible so I don't rub as much paint or rub as little paint off as I can. And then what I'm doing is I'm resting my 2 fingers on the wing or the side of my hand so that I have a nice steady base from which to paint from. So that's kind of cool. Add some of those guys on there. He's got some on his arms too, but I think I want to leave those blue. Right? And then he's got his teeth, of course, which we'll do later. Cool. All right. So that wash is still drying on the back there, you can see. And what I'll do is sometimes I'll go in, if it's taking a little too long, I'll brush it over if it's really kind of thick in that area. Do that. Like that. All right. I am going to go ahead and I'm going to try and dry brush this magic blue on here. We're on to magic blue now. Now I'm using the air paint because we couldn't find the regular one, but that's okay. So the idea behind dry brushing, for those of you that don't know, is that you basically are loading your brush with paint and then wiping as much as possible off it, which seems counterintuitive, but basically what that does is it allows or leaves kind of a residue left on your brush, almost like a paint residue, not even paint itself. So you're brushing it basically till there's almost nothing left on the brush, and then you're carefully running it against the grain. And so what I mean by that is doing it this way, it would get into all the cracks or the segmentations or whatever, all the dips in the tail. You don't want to do that. What you want is to go against it like this so that it's picking it up just on the edges of the surface. So basically it's just catching the topmost areas of that color or of that area, and it's adding a highlight in one go. All right. There. See, you can see how that's just grabbing the edges, and we're going to do that all over the blue areas, being careful not to get it on. You see how I'm using the edge of my brush there, and then I'm just running it just along the top ridge of that spine on the wing there. Being careful, of course, because we do have a wash everywhere, to not disturb that wash as much as possible. The face, the side of the ear here. Where's everyone from? I'd like to hear where everybody's from here. My chat is disappeared again here. Let's get back in. We are in Canada, close to Toronto, in fact, and it is much too cold for May currently. I actually really enjoyed dry brushing. It's a process that just you start to really see the piece come to life when you do it. You want to use a brush that you don't care about too much, or basically a brush that's kind of on its way out, because you don't want it to, because this will kind of harm the bristles when you do it. But we're starting to get some depth in here. Hopefully you guys can see that at home. All right, so this, you can see that really nice. It's picking up just like the folds on the wings. Like that. Wow, that turned out really nice. See that? Starting to sound like Bob Ross. Happy little wing. Almost done the dry brushing of Magic Blue. Next, after Magic Blue, we're going to go to Electric Blue, which is a much lighter blue. And we want to be careful, because if you overdo it and you add too much, it's going to really pop, like almost too much for what you're looking for. Dry brushing should be subtle, and it should be in multiple layers. So let's just grab the Electric Blue here. We're going to try this. You can see it's quite a bit lighter than the Magic Blue is. And for Electric Blue, we're just going to use the same brush, because you don't want to wet it, because you want the brush to be dry while you're doing it. So we're just going to dab it in the Electric Blue. Again, work it right into your paper towel there as much as possible, so there's hardly any left. Then what I do usually is I test it on an area that is easy to cover later. So kind of on the back of the, see, there we go. You can see right away, as soon as I brush it over even once over that texture, it picks up the highest areas. Now, we don't want to do this everywhere. I'm just going to do it on the areas that the light would hit the most. You can see the beautiful texture that's creating on the mini. And I'm hitting only the areas that are on the highest points of an area. So for example, on the leg here, what you want to do is you want to get the top of the haunch, kind of the quad there, and then kind of along the side, but then we're stopping there. On this arm, again, shoulder, kind of along the side, on the knuckles, and then we'll stop there, like that. Face, same thing, right? We want more on top, because that's where the light's hitting, and then hardly any on the bottom. And that'll give you that kind of realistic lighting on the face. You can see already it's doing that. Are we getting any chat there, Rachel? I see the last thing was Bill Allen said sweet. I think I'm behind on the chat. The chat's kind of acting up. But you can see, guys, on this wing, I'm going really light with the dry brush and only along the spines. And you can see how it's really adding some really nice subtle highlights.
There's people from Norway, Brazil, New Jersey.
Norway, Brazil, New Jersey. Jeez.
And Darkstrider193 is asking, have you painted the miniatures in the D&D board game they released a few years ago with the adult dragon? Any advice?
I have not. Are they to scale, or are they smaller versions? I do have Assault of the Giants, which is awesome. But those come pre-painted, so I haven't painted any of the ones. But I'm assuming if they're plastic, they probably have to be primed, because they probably don't come pre-primed. So I would absolutely make sure that whatever kind of board game pieces that you buy and want to paint, that you make sure that they're primed first, because most of them don't come primed. So you want to buy some spray primer or even some brush-on primer to make sure you do that. So that would be my first tip. And then you would just paint them like any other miniature. In fact, I would use, I don't know what colors they are, but whatever colors they are, I would just use kind of our tutorials, or there are lots of other great tutorials out there that would work as well. Okay, so that is electric blue. And that worked out quite nicely.
Can you tilt the overture a bit towards you more?
Which way? Down?
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. So you can see it has added some nice texture to those wings. If you guys can see, really cool. Basically, at that point, the blue's done. What I do like to do, and it's going to make a big mess here, but I'll put some paper towel down to do it, is I will do it right now, actually. It's a fun little technique. But basically, I'm going to put across, because it is going to spray. We're just going to grab some paper towel here, put it down, because if you're painting at your dining room table and you live with your parents, they're not going to like blue wash on their dining room table, you know what I'm saying? All right. So we're going to grab our dry brush, so the one that's kind of like messy anyways, and you're going to take the brush and you're going to dip it in some blue wash. You're going to water it down a little bit, dip it in your blue wash like this, so it's nice and loaded. You're going to grab your wing here, and we're going to basically like spray like this onto the wing. As you can see, this would be really messy if we didn't have. But what that's going to do is it's going to give it these little like dots, so it looks like natural texture on the wings, and it just gives it a little bit more kind of personality, like that. And just on the wings, I usually do that.
Elegant OL says, I love the dry brushing technique to add depth. Those wings look amazing. I don't think the camera does it justice.
Yeah, that's the other problem too, is we're working on our lighting situation and our camera situation. So when that improves, hopefully we'll have an opportunity to be a bit clearer. But we're still kind of working on the technical sides of this. But yeah, it works. It works really nicely. We will be posting pictures of the Mini afterwards on our Instagram and in our Facebook. To see those, you guys can go to facebook.com/RealmSmithTV, RealM Smith TV, and then as well on Instagram, it's the same. It's /RealmSmithTV as well. We have lots of stuff up there that we've painted over time and that we've crafted. So if you guys are interested in what we're doing here and you're enjoying it, please do that and check that out. And follow us on Twitch. Follow the D&D Twitch because they're wonderful partners and we want to give them lots of love. But also head over to twitch.tv/RealmSmith and follow us there too. Okay. We're going to go on back to all of these areas on the wings. And so we have this really nice kind of heavy ochre color. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go to khaki, which is this color here. And we're going to do a secondary kind of layer coat over the ochre. And we're going to use a bit of a larger brush. We're going to use, I'm using a number 4 Vallejo brush. It's a dry brush, but do this. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and kind of fill the center area of the wing like this. And leave a little bit of heavy ochre in the recesses, just because it's a bit of a darker, kind of richer color. But this khaki is going to start to kind of make it a bit more, not as warm, I guess, a color. And as you can see, the color on the blue dragon wings is actually quite kind of muted and desaturated. So this is actually going to do that nicely while still kind of allowing some of that warmth in the crevices. And then we are going to wash this with a sepia wash as well, which will help all of that.
Guy Green is saying, what about using a blow dryer to accelerate the process? Is it worth it?
Yeah, definitely. The thing though about using a blow dryer is it's great for like layer paints that are thicker, but when you're using washes, it will actually blow, if you're not careful, blow the washes into different areas of the mini and just move it around so won't rest in the recesses the way it should. We should definitely have some sort of drying thing. If we run into that issue often in the show, maybe we'll look into that. But yeah, what we're using now is khaki to continue our wings and then the belly as well. That is khaki. There. Very good.
Anything in the way of it.
It's good. It's great. All right. Sorry. Oh, is that what's going on? Okay. All right. Okay. So almost done on the wings here. There we go. Now maybe we'll make those a little smaller. We just want to make sure you guys know what colors to use while we go here. There. All right. And then I'm going to go in. I'm also going to do all of these. So actually I'm going to use a slightly smaller brush because I want to make sure that use a number 2 brush from Vallejo, and we're going to get that khaki, and we're basically going to paint it on all the scales, all the large segments, leaving that ochre, or ochre, depending on where you're from, apparently, in the recesses. So we're doing this, and then we're going to wash it with sepia, and then we're going to do a dry brush of bone white, and it'll look good. Another technique when you're doing scales that are close, you can use the edge of the brush. So the kind of the side of the brush instead, and it'll just kind of catch the edges without going into the recesses there.
I think you already said it, but Maribel said, do the minis get some kind of varnish in the end to protect the color?
So yes, so either use spray varnish or kind of a brush-on varnish. That's what I use to protect the minis afterwards as well. Let's see if I can get this chat back up as well. The Twitch chat is kind of acting up. It won't. There we go. There we go. All right. I've got the chat back up. Yay. Oh. If you ever make a mistake like I just did, just take a brush that you haven't used, a dryer brush, and then just wipe it off. Again, folks, this is quick and dirty. Catching every scale on the way down as much as possible. When I get to the bottom, where the scales are kind of closer together, I'm just using the edge of my brush, like so, to catch those spots. Like that. Done. All right, so that is all of that. I will put some khaki on some of the horns on top. Time is it? 45 minutes? I think we're doing all right. Again, we're allowing that heavy ochre to rest in the base of the horn. But we were putting this khaki kind of all the way up to like 2/3 of the way down the mini here. Like that. And then in here like this. There. Bony protrusions are kind of Godzilla-ish. It's very cool. Okay. All right, so first kind of layer is done of khaki on the ochre. We've also done it on the belly section and on the horns. We have a tan in the mouth now that needs a little bit of a wash. For that, we already have a violet ink here, which we're going to use for the kind of the lightning effect that comes with the mini. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use that in the mouth. So I've got tan in there. I'm just literally going to put violet ink into the mouth and let it rest into the recesses, and that will give us some depth on the tongue and on the inside of the mouth. I don't know if you guys can see that or not. It's pretty dark, but that will do what we want it to do. Just give it a bit of depth. Hopefully you can see that. Okay. And then we are going to go back and do the teeth and such on that mouth and the eye. Okay, so while that is drying, actually we're going to do that now. Let's do that now. I'm actually going to go straight bone white on the teeth, and then when we wash it with sepia, sometimes it's good. Like, you don't have to actually work up multiple layers on smaller areas. Sometimes it's great if you want like a bone texture to just go with something like bone white or a lighter color. Even white will work sometimes, or a gray, depending on what you're trying to paint. And then paint it directly onto the area, and then just wash it with a wash, and all of a sudden you get the immediate kind of texture that you're looking for. So we're just going to do the teeth here. Along here, there. They're very small, but we're just kind of hitting them with some bone white to make them a bit more pronounced, like that and that. Just like that. The inside too, like that. So we can see them, and then when we wash them, then you'll get some depth in them, but they'll still remain somewhat kind of light in color. All right, and maybe we'll do, while that's drying, maybe I'll do the special effect. So we'll grab our blister pack again, and it's right in here. And you'll find the clear effect on many Nolzur's WizKids minis, but this one here is the lightning effect that goes into the mouth. And so you can put this in the mouth like this, it goes inside, and it looks like it's breathing out lightning effect. And what we're going to do for that, it's very simple, is you'll get an ink. So washes are meant to go into the recesses and create contrast and shadow, but inks are actually meant to kind of tint a surface. I don't know if they're more viscous or what the technology or the science is behind it, but Kellyanne says, I've never worked with ink before. I wouldn't have thought of that. And Darkstrider says the problem with dragons is you want them all. That's true. But yeah, so with an ink, I'm gonna wash it down just a touch, like this, or not wash it. Sorry, dilute it just a touch with some water. But the thing about inks too is they're less opaque, I find, than washes are, and so literally, we're just going to paint the ink over the surface of this lightning, like this. And it'll still remain semi-transparent. You know, in the recesses, we'll get a little bit of kind of shadow or whatever, but for the most part, if you're careful with it, or if you spread it out enough and try and limit the brush strokes, you'll get a really cool kind of effect going, like this. I wanted to make sure I got that in here. But I use the Vallejo inks for all of the kind of clear effects that come in these minis. Now again, if you do it too thick, it'll become more opaque. You don't want that. You want it to be nice and thin. You don't want too many bubbles, too many brush strokes. You don't want it kind of clotting, but that's what you want to do. I won't do the whole thing. I'll make sure we have enough time to finish the mini, but that's the idea. You let that dry, and it will hopefully look super cool. Okay. I think the majority of this khaki is dry. Yeah, it's looking good. Okay, now that the khaki is dry, we're going to wash it with sepia. So we're going to get our sepia shade, which is a sepia wash. Again, the Vallejo washes are to bring contrast and depth. Add some to our palette. We are going to slightly water it down. Just add a little bit of water. I diluted it just a touch. And then we're going to paint it on all of these wing surfaces like this. This is where the magic happens again. So you can see right away it brings out, it adds delineation to the section of the blue and the khaki, but it also brings out all that texture on the wing, like that. You want to make sure it moves into the recesses as much as possible, like this. And so we have these bubbles here, but they pretty much disappear by the time it dries, I find. We will go then after this, and we will dry brush khaki back on, and then we'll dry brush bone white, and we'll get really cool effects. The bone white is just going to go kind of on the edges. Right. And typically what I do is I add the wash to the surface, and then I push it around so that it rests where I like it to rest. Actually, the next thing we're going to do before we even dry brush it is once this is dry, I'm going to paint in some veins on the inside of these wings. All right. And again, working it into the belly and neck area of the dragon, like this. Making sure again that it doesn't that it doesn't conceal or build up in the recesses so much that you lose the detail. You definitely don't want that, but just enough so that all the recesses are darker than the rest. Even where it meets the body, just a little bit there, and then in the tail. I need some more here. we have a question from Neroon. Is the sepia wash one color or is there different sepia colors? So no, sepia is just one wash type within the wash line. There's also, I have a blue wash here. There's also a red wash, a flesh wash, a pale gray wash, a black wash. I use black wash a lot, mostly on metal and anything that you really want kind of that dark contrast in. But there's many colors and types of washes. It just depends on what, what result you want, what color. Sometimes I'll use a purple wash on a red base coat, or even mid-tone to get kind of a richer, darker red. It's fun to play with washes. One of the cool things about washes that I like to do, and really simple, is, for example, like a skeleton. If you buy skeleton minis, they're base coat, they're primed. You base coat them with bone white, and then you just wash them with sepia, and all of a sudden you have really cool looking skeletons. Because that wash just rests into the recesses, and you're good to go. Unless they're carrying armor and weapons and stuff, and then that's different. But all right, we're gonna add some sepia again, like I said before, to the horns on the head and the little bony protrusions along its back. Like so. Don't want it to be too dark. And then also to the teeth. Which I'm doing along the teeth there, like that. All right. Okay, so we're gonna let that, and you can see here, like it tends to get a little bit blotchy when it dries, but then when we dry brush it after, it's gonna look great. All right. I think I'm going to do the eyes. So for the eyes, I'm going to keep it super simple. It's going to have green eyes, livery green. Sometimes I like to do kind of a dot the eye and then use a wash or an ink to create a glow around the eye. And so you basically pool it in. We don't have that here. I'm trying to keep it kind of simple, but that is a cool effect too. So basically what I'm going to do here, again, resting, this is a super detailed area, the most detailed thing we'll do on this mini. But we are going to take this livery green on a 0 brush, and I'm going to use kind of the edge of it. And eyes are always, a trouble area for people. And we're just going to work it in like that. Boom, eye done. And then also on this side as well. Sometimes you got to twist and turn your mini to get it where you want it to be, just like that. There. I may do like a little black stripe through it, but that is good enough for glowing green eyes. Okay, while we wait for that sepia to wash, I'm also going to, I'm getting paint all over my Monsters Manual. Look at that, eh? It's okay, it's love. Adds texture, and personality, character. Let's focus on the black. So again, I'm going to take my number 2 brush, black paint. The Vallejo black it has a slight gloss to it, so I like that for claws. We're going to dip in there, and we are just going to do all of his claws black, as you can see in the Monsters Manual. Just going to go around the entire mini and do that. Definitely be sure, folks, to check out all of the D&D live content that D&D will be streaming next weekend. Some super exciting things going on. Really great live streams. Very excited to be there. What's that? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm so bad at that. Get into my own world. And like that. All right. You can see black claws. Just rotating as much as you can if you have to get difficult areas, whatever angle allows you to kind of do it easily enough so that you don't mess anything else up. Almost done. Dark Stripe says, what level would the PCs in your game be if you put them up against the dragon? Oh, good question. Well, so it has a CR rating of 9. And so typically what that means, if you look at the Monsters Manual, typically what that means is that you have a 9th level party would be sufficient to fight a 9 challenge rating creature. So a CR rating of 9, typically you would put a 9th level party against it. So a party of at least 4 PCs against a 9th level creature. That said, in Storm King's Thunder, my characters had the ability, or my PCs had the ability to square off against a like adult or legendary dragon, which is probably a CR of 18 or 20, I'm not sure, at like level 8 or something. So really it depends on the on the level. So it's not a hard and fast rule for me. It really depends on the encounter. Again, I'm playing Storm King's Thunder, and there is a really big bad creature that I can't give spoilers because they may face it tomorrow night. But there's a big bad creature that's really high level that they may not face, depending on the timing and when they arrive, where they're supposed to arrive. But the encounter is such that it comes, it does some damage, and it leaves. And it's intended just as a story plot thing. So, I mean, if they were fighting it, I would put a 9th level party against this, because that's just a hard and fast kind of challenge rating rule. But it really depends on environment effects. It depends on terrain. It depends on so many different things as to how prepared or how challenging that encounter will be. I'm still seeing little areas of blue, but as I said before, this heavy blue that we used almost at the beginning is still wet in the palette. So if I find any areas, like I have been, that I missed, I can always go back, like this toe right here. I can always go back and just paint it after the fact. That. Some more black here. If you guys are interested in, if you're going to Origins Game Fair, June 12th to 16th, we will be teaching masterclasses partnered with Vallejo and WizKids in the Vallejo booth. And we'll be painting this along with the rest of the dragons and all the Wave 8 large miniatures. We're super excited for that. So if you guys are in Ohio or are going to Origins, make sure that you guys check that out. We're doing like 3 classes a day. I think the events are live, or they will be live soon. So, stay posted for that, because that'll be a lot of fun. We did it last year, and it was a blast. Okay, I may use a little bit of black here to do the eye, as I mentioned. You want to make sure that you, with detailed areas like eye, pupils, and stuff, make sure that the paint flows well, because if not, you're just going to keep jabbing at it. You're going to make a mess of it. So, get really nice and close to the camera here if I can. And basically, I'm just going to do a little slit like that in the eye. Quick and dirty, folks. Quick and dirty. Blue Dragon in 2 hours. Just like that. Okay. This is always my favorite part of a stream, when I blow so masculinely on my mini to dry it. It's like the worst. All right, so let's get some khaki back on here. I'm going to try and do some of this. You can see that the sepia wash is still wet in some areas, but we might still move forward. I can't believe that we were able to do as much as we did. Oh, before I do that, I promised you I was going to do some veins. So let's do that first. I'm going to use... What am I going to use for veins? Something that I already have access to. Won't use ochre. I might, I wonder if, let's see if we can use some actual sepia wash. See how that works. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to start there, and I'm just going to, yeah, it does work. So we're just going to use undiluted sepia wash and just kind of paint vein textures almost like lightning down the wing like that. Oh, jeez. Like this. And that's just going to give a really cool texture so that when we dry brush over it with khaki again, then we'll have that showing through. It's going to be super cool. Promise. All right. Just add a bunch here. Make sure you have a nice tip on your brush. Again, tune in next week's, not next week, sorry, week after next. Same time on the D&D Twitch and on the RealmSmith Twitch for episode 3. We'll be painting the young black dragon from WizKids, which, again, super excited about. Now I'm trying to stick to the 12 colors that we pulled just to kind of show how easy it is to get the results you can. Typically, maybe I'd use like a dark brown for this, kind of a beastie brown or something, but for this, I wanted to use the wash to take advantage of what we've already used. All right. Okay. That works. The other option, although as it dries, it's not quite as clear as it was. You see that? It's starting to disappear a little bit. So I may go in there now, again, adjusting as we go. I may use some ochre and add a little bit of black to it, just to darken it up a bit, and then do it. Maybe add a little bit of sepia to that, kind of have some fun, and now try this. Let's see. Yeah, because we're losing it there a little bit. Not quite dark enough. But you still get the idea. All right. Okay. So next, you can see that as this starts to dry, you can see that the effect of the ink on that is working out fairly well. All right. Dry brushing the wings. Try this off nicely. We're going to grab khaki again, and we're going to add some of that to our, although the khaki in my palette is still wet. Thank you to Vallejo. And we're going to wipe off most of that khaki on the paper towel. And okay, so for this, same thing. Again, we want to make sure that those veins are dry before we do this, but you're just going to do this, and you're going to dry brush the khaki onto the vein area, and it's going to cover some of the vein area, but it's still going to show through slightly, so it almost looks kind of semi-opaque. We want to just go through and dry brush. Now again, we don't want to do too high, and there is some areas of the wash that is still not completely dry. But if we're just hitting the edges, hopefully it's not causing problems in the recesses. Like that. So just a quick dry brush on the top of the horns, big horn on the head, like that. Okay. And then we're going to go in and we're going to use bone white. Now again, same thing with bone white as it was for electric blue. It's going to be pretty bright, so we don't want to go too hard on it. Just get a little bit of bone white in our brush, wipe most of it off, and then we're just going to run it gently along the edge of the scales and the stomach, and this will give you one final highlight. Look at that. One final highlight on those areas. You'll be able to see it kind of on the side of the, oh, totally getting his claw here. If it's too wet, it'll be more of an overbrush and you'll gunk up the actual recesses and you don't want that. Do it on the top of the horn here and on the edges of all of the little bony things in the back. And here on the wings, we're just going to concentrate on the bottom of the wing near the edge. Just to kind of lighten it up closer to the bottom, like that. This side too. We might be done this early again. I thought for sure this time around we would be. And then I'm going to do a little bit on the teeth. Got to be careful not to hit the blue. But there we go. So that is pretty much almost done. You can also see kind of the stippling effect or the spraying effect that we did on the wings. Turned out really nicely as well. Jason, can you paint me one of those? Mikey says. If I had the time, Mikey, I'd paint everybody one. But the beauty of what I'm doing here is you can paint your own and you can do it really super, super well. It's not difficult. As you guys can see, just following some basic techniques, you can get a fairly decent result. Again, this is quick and dirty. Hour and a half it took us to do this. And we have a blue dragon that is tabletop ready. Good to go. I'm going to clean up some of the black areas on the claws that have rubbed off because I was handling it. And then again, I'm going to go spray varnish this with some Vallejo spray varnish afterwards so that it stays nice and painted and new and all of that stuff. Oh, there's some blue on the back of the knee here. You can just go back with some of the base coat and touch that up, or some of the electric blue if it's on an edge, on a peak. There we go. The eyes are a little bit big. Let me show you a little bit of a tip that I do when I have eyes. So when I do eyes on actual like smaller character minis, I'll do white and then I'll do a black stripe and then I'll go back in and I'll paint around it with the original kind of dark color from the mini or what that I used on the mini. So that way you don't get these kind of like big surprised anime eyes like this guy has. So I'm just going to go back in. Get really tight on it, and I'm just going to go back in and almost basically painting the eyelids. That, see how that closed it in nicely and it doesn't look as crazy anymore. This one too, I'll go in like that. There. And then that way it doesn't look too overdone. Might as well go back and finish this. Now I think I probably went a little too opaque on this purple wash here. I probably should have done it in much thinner layers. You can see that it's kind of muddled in certain areas. I don't love that. So for future, I probably would have done like multiple thin layers instead. But there we go. Actually, and this wash is kind of wetting the wash that was under it, so it's kind of fixing some of those areas there. There. Just like that. I feel like I'm forgetting something on this mini. I can't believe we finished it as quickly as we did. Take one kind of quick look, and then we can go in and we can pick out some more areas if we want, now that we have a little bit of time left over here. For the base, let me show you the base and what I would typically do for the base. These bases all come, or these dragons all come with a really cool base for them, a flying base. So that's the base for this one. Very cool. Cool kind of rocky texture. Desert texture, because I think blue dragons typically live in the desert, if I'm correct. And so this is obviously like sand and stuff. You know what? Maybe we'll paint the base too. We got the time to do it. Why not? Didn't think we'd get to the base, but here we are. So the bases are really cool. They just literally slot into the side of the dragon like this. And there we go. And then you got a cool flying blue young dragon. Young blue dragon, I should say. And then once this dries, you can put that in the mouth if you want, when it's doing what it does best. So we're gonna grab some khaki. You know what? I'm not going to use khaki. I'm going to use heavy ochre because it's sandy color. Add a bit more, even though my heavy ochre is still wet in the palette, believe it or not, which is great. I'm going to water it down a little bit here, just so we get decent coverage. Now for these, you just got to make sure that you don't get that clear effect, kind of stem that holds them up. But I'm just going to go around and I'm going to paint the whole base heavy ochre. Again, careful not to get it onto the base. I did a little bit there. So what I do when I do that, I get one of my brushes that's already clean and dry and just wipe it off. So when you make mistakes, it's not the end. There's still ways around it. Before I mentioned our crates, we have a monthly adventure crate you guys can check out at www.realmsmith.tv. And basically what that is, you know, we started teaching people how to do fun stuff for your tabletop. We thought, hey, how cool would it be if we actually sent you everything you needed to create awesome adventures at home right to your doorstep every month. So you guys can check out the RealmSmith adventure crates. You get an encounter a month, starting with our first one. You can see it on the screen there. That is the Shattered Shield. Which starts off a campaign or an adventure that will lead to a further campaign. So every month, you get a brand new box that furthers the storyline. It will occur in six month story arcs, and so right now we're about to ship. This month we'll be shipping number 5, and then 6 will be the final one in June. And then we start a new adventure, which will lead from the same story arc. So it's a different adventure, but the same campaign. So you guys can check that out at realmsmith.tv. We have a lot of pictures and stuff of it on our Instagram and Facebook as well. Okay, let that dry a little bit. It's going to take a little time. Oh, and of course my dragon falls right on the base. And we get ochre all over it. Ochre. I'm totally calling it ochre from now on. Thanks, whoever that was. Captain Goose 51 says, came late, but wow, that looks good. Thanks, Captain Goose. Dark Starter says, would you glue in the lightning or does it come in and out easily? I haven't tried it yet. It's not dry, so I don't want to try and handle it too much. But my assumption is that it comes in and out quite easily. I think that's the intention. But it looks like it's a decent snug fit, so. Looking good, though. And the veins worked out, I think. You still get that kind of veiny look there. You can see in the wing. It's kind of my favorite feature of it right now. While we're waiting for that desert to dry, I will say, again, if you guys want to follow us on Twitter at RealmSmith, and on YouTube and Twitch at /RealmSmith, and on Facebook and Instagram at /RealmSmithTV. Make sure that you subscribe and you follow and you like all our stuff. We love to hear from you guys. If you guys have comments or thoughts on how to improve these and what it would take maybe to make it easier for you guys to digest, or if there's certain areas or aspects or techniques that you guys want to dig into, what minis you guys would like to see, definitely please send us a message, post in our socials, or even comment on the video We go through all of it, and we'll make sure that we make the best possible show for you guys that we possibly can. We love having you guys here. We're super thankful to D&D for putting us and hosting us on their Twitch channel. It's an honor. And again, super thankful to WizKids for supporting us and sending us minis in order to do this and creating awesome minis that we can then paint with Vallejo paints, which are really great paints. Remember, this coming week, that would be what month is it? May. May 17th to 20th is D&D Live, and so you can catch tons of awesome stuff. We're going to be there, and we're really excited to attend and be a part of this awesome event. They do it every year, and so we won't have a show this coming Sunday, a week today, this coming Sunday, but we will have the Black Dragon the following Sunday as well. Check out Origins. We have all our events are posted there or will be posted soon. Make sure that you sign up for them because they go really, really fast. They're super affordable, and you basically sit myself live, and I teach you guys how to paint minis for a couple hours. We're doing 3 a day, and we're doing all kinds of awesome Wave 8 large minis. Most of them are the double wides like this. So definitely make sure that you guys tune in to be able to do that. Also, if you're into live stream gameplay, we do a weekly D&D live stream gameplay of 5th edition. Tomorrow night is our Storm King's Thunder campaign, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, called Sentinels of the Storm. And then we have Order of Dragons Bay the next week, and we alternate weeks. And so we go back and forth from them. Currently, that may change in the near future, but we're working on a better schedule so that we're more consistent and you guys kind of get the same content every week. And that's awesome. We still got a couple more minutes left. I'm just going to blow on this. We keep doing this. I got to find ways to extend our painting time because clearly we're overestimating what it will take to paint all these. We're almost, it's not even close to dry yet. So we're just going to do that for 15 minutes. How do you guys feel about that? Does it make you uncomfortable? All right. You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here because it's actually kind of watery. I'm just going to, little trick, wipe off the excess because it's already started to cure. We don't need all that. We can just kind of spread it out a little bit more. You guys have any D&D minis that you've seen that are coming out in Wave 8 or have come out in Wave 8 that you guys would like us to paint, actually? If there's anybody out there that has any minis you would like to see us paint from Wave 8, the latest, or any wave, really. We can do, last week we had somebody ask us if we could walk them through how to touch up existing pre-painted minis. And I said, that is a great idea. We should totally do that. And then WizKids proper actually asked us. They're like, hey, would you consider doing that? Because we get questions a lot about how to do that. So that'd be fun. So maybe we'll get some pre-painted stuff at some point, or we have a bunch of pre-painted, but maybe we'll use some more pre-painted stuff at some point to be able to provide you guys some tips on how to do that. Would you glue in the... Oh, we already answered that from Darkstrider. Yeah, cool. All right. So, just so you guys know, because we're right at the tail end here, and I don't think this is going to dry before we have to go offline here. But basically, I have heavy ochre on the base, and it is the extra opaque paint from Vallejo, which goes on really, you can see that, like one coat, and it was diluted, and it went on really solid in the first take. So we're going to let that dry, and then all we're going to do is we're going to take sepia shade like this, and we're going to paint it all over the base, spread it around, make sure it rests into the recesses, and then we'll probably dry brush it with either khaki and, well, probably some khaki first, and then some bone white after that, just to make sure that we have some, you know, and I may even add some tufts of grass kind of things. Would be super cool to do. Any suggestions yet? Would you use texture paints? Why not keep up the dragon theme and do young green dragon? So, Captain, we are. So we've said and we've told everybody that we are going to be doing the 4 young dragons from Nolzur's Marvelous Miniatures by WizKids. We did the Copper Dragon last week, which you can again see VOD on our YouTube page, youtube.com/RealmSmith. And then this week's the Blue Dragon. Next week we'll be doing the Young Black Dragon, and then the week after that we'll be doing the Young Green Dragon. Then after that we're not so sure yet. So we want to be able to hear from you guys what you'd like to see us paint next in the series after the dragons. There has been rumors that we might be painting a Shambling Mound. I'm very kind of excited about that. And actually, the Shambling Mound might be featured in one of our crates. So it's kind of a double bonus for us because I get to paint one and then use it on the table. And hopefully my noobs aren't watching because that was a spoiler. Yeah, all right. Eight minutes left. A Gorgon. Oh, Gorgon would be cool. Giants. Yeah, so Captain Goose, there's a bunch. They released a bunch of giants in Wave 8. They have a Hill Giant, Stone Giant, and a Cloud Giant, I believe, or Storm Giant. I'm not sure. Storm Giant. And we will be painting those at Origins in our master classes. So maybe we'll do a giant in the month following that. That's a great idea. I think we'll absolutely do that. All right, I think that is it for us, folks. It is Sunday night. It's Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. Again, hardest job on the planet. We appreciate all of you moms out there. We wouldn't be here without you. Really, actually, technically, we wouldn't be here without you. So thanks to moms for allowing us to live. All out there. So thanks for everyone who tuned in despite Mother's Day. Mikey says paint anything. We will absolutely paint anything. We love to paint. Again, we will not be live next Sunday. Remember that. The following Sunday, we will be back with the Young Black Dragon. But make sure that you check out D&D Live because, again, we're super, super excited about it. Let's get a final look at the Blue Dragon. Maybe I'll put the base on it, even though it's not totally dry and shaded, but whatever. Look at that. So this is a final look at our Blue Dragon from today, painted in literally about an hour and a half. And that's all it takes, folks. It's super simple techniques, dry brushing, shading, base coating, and some kind of layer effects. And you get a super cool, super awesome final Blue Dragon. All right. All right, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. Tomorrow night, join us for Sentinels of the Storm, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on www.youtube.com/RealmSmith and twitch.tv/RealmSmith as well. Make sure that you head over to our channel as well and follow us there, as well as follow the D&D channel. We're so happy to be here, and we're so excited to do this. That is episode 2 in the can, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. You guys have a wonderful week, and we will see you at D&D Live, and then we'll also see you a week from then doing the Black Dragon as well. Have a good one. Peace.